Hello students, the purpose of this tutorial is to show you how to create a sales forecast template. The idea behind this is that within Capsim, probably the most difficult and most important question that you're going to answer is what is going to be my sales by product for this year? What is my sales forecasts? It is the $500 million question. If you can get that right, your pro forma balance scorecards will be accurate. Your pro forma financial statements will be accurate. Everything works out. So and this is not going to be a silver bullet to give you the answers, but it will certainly help you put you in the right direction. Or at the very least, it is a first step in the right direction. All right, so the first thing we're going to do, and what we'll do is we'll create the template, and then we'll flip to the fast track and fill out the numbers from the fast track. But let's first do this for the low tech market. And let's first take the total market size last year. Let's see here. Let me format this a little bit. Total market size last year, the percent growth, the total market size this year, percent of the market that we're going to capture, and the sales in the low-tech market, or our sales in the low-tech market. And then let's put a few columns in here for products. Like we'll assume we're Baldwin, so we've got the Baker product, and we made a new product called the Ball and the Bat product. If we assume that the total market size last year for the low-tech market was 10,000 units, and if we assume that the next year's segment growth rate was 10%, well, then you know that the growth, you can do that math, the growth is going to be 1,000. And if we add that back into the market size for last year, that means that the total market size this year is going to be 11,000. So you could key that in. And let's assume now that we believe we're going to take 15% of the market in the low tech for the Baker product. So we can type 15% there. And, well, let's make it easy. Let's say it's 20%. There we go. Then we can do the math in our heads, and we can say, okay, if 10% of 11,000 is 1,100, that means 20% of 11,000 is 2,200. So we can just type in 2,200. And that will be our sales for the Baker product in the low-tech market. Now, the purpose of this template, though, is to create something in Excel that you can just plug a few key input cells into, and then it automatically does the calculations. And the key input cells will be that number, and that number. Those three will be the key input cells. So we'll designate them as input cells by shading them yellow. And now if we create this template correctly, we can just simply change that number. We can simply change the percent growth for the entire market and our percent of the market, and it'll automatically update these numbers. Right now they're actually hard-coded values in there, so they're not going to change if we change this at all. If I change that to 12,000, it certainly doesn't change that because that's a value. So the goal here is to actually enter in a formula into the cell that will help you to calculate, that'll help this automatically calculate. I would encourage you this time to pause the video and to see if you can figure out that formula and also that formula. Alright, this is how you do it. Hopefully you got it by yourself. If you do equals that cell times the growth times that cell, and then you plus this cell back into the equation and hit enter, then you've got a formula that actually will calculate that. Now if you change it to 12,000, it will correctly update to 13,200. I'm going to put in a top border just to show that that it's a formula cell. I'm also going to put a top border into here. And then let's create this formula cell. I would encourage you also to stop and try to make this formula. Now I'll show you how to do it. Okay, this is simply that number multiplied by that number. And hit enter. Boom. Now we have a formula that'll automatically update if we change those cells. I'll format that by hitting a comma and decreasing the decimal points. The rest is, well, let's format that the same way. Alright, so now we've got the low-tech market. Why don't we put a little shading in there just so we can easily identify it. And there's different ways of doing this. You know, you can format it however you want. Don't just do it my way. Let's see, that's not right. Let me get that lined up. Okay, so now that's lined up better, and let me go ahead and copy this down to here, and we'll call this the high-tech market. I got these rows a little bit too narrow, so I'm going to make these rows a little bit bigger. I just highlighted that. You move your cursor over to where it changes to the cross, what are those called, crosshairs? The cross symbol there, and then you double click and it'll right size all of the row height. Alright, so now we've got this set up for the high-tech market. The high-tech market's smaller, of course, but we'll plug in the accurate numbers later. And now we can do a number for our total sales forecast. Maybe we'll put that back and bold it, since this is really the important number. And this formula is very simple. It's just going to be the sum of that plus that, right? Which we can tell is 4,400. But let's do the formula for it. I would encourage you to pause it and actually create the formula yourself. Here it is. Equals that cell plus that cell. Hit enter. Boom. There you go. We'll format with top and double bottom border. That'll look the best there. And now the ball and the bat products. Let's go ahead and center, justify those. And now these, let's go ahead and we'll copy this over, but we're going to change this slightly. There's no reason to retype this 10,000 in every time because it's the same total market size. So we'll just set this up to be a formula. And that's the same way. Those are the same way. So I'm going to remove the shading from those cells, and then we'll change it to a formula where we'll just say equals that cell. Boom. Hit enter, and we'll copy that over. So that equals that cell. And then the growth is going to be the same thing. Equals that. Hit enter. And we'll copy and paste that cell. Control C, Control V over. Now we can actually copy those 4 cells, paste them down to there. I just selected it, hit Control C, clicked right there, Control V. Okay. Now that is going to be accurate, and the rest is all right. Okay, so now we've got our template ready to rock and roll. Maybe we'll bold these, and finally we'll go to View and remove the grid lines. It's a little bit cleaner to see. We'll save it. Now, what we need to do now is actually plug in the actual numbers from the fast track. So let's first go see what the total market size last year was from the fast track. Here it is on page 5 of the fast track, the low-tech segment analysis. Total industry unit demand was 5524. So let's plug that in, 5524, enter. Now let's flip back and see what the growth is for this next year. There it is. Next year's segment growth rate, 10.4%. So let's enter 10.4%. You know what? And we probably should format that so you can actually see the decimal point. If you just click on that right there, it increases the decimal point. We should probably actually do all 6 of these. I'm holding down Control, selects non-adjacent cells. So I selected those cells, I hit Control, selected those cells, and put in 1 more decimal point. And let's change this actually to match this. Next year's segment growth rate. So I'll just copy that actually. Let's do that. Right here. Boom. Whoa, 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 whoa. That didn't work. Let's get inside that cell. So I clicked up top, highlighted it, hit Control V. Whoa, it does not like that. I don't know why it's doing that. We'll just type over the top of it. Next year's segment growth rate. Oh, the column's a little bit too long there, so we move it up to there until it makes the cross, and then we double click and it'll right size that column width. Alright, and then we'll copy this down here too. So that is fairly accurate. Now we have to put our percent of the market in. You can scroll down and see what your potential market share was last year. That's a good starting point, but then you've got to make a lot of other considerations in. Let's see, here it was Baker. Our market share was 16%. Let's go down and look at our potential market share. Potential market share for Baker was, let's see, potential market share for the low tech was 15.8%. So let's throw that in there. 15.8%. That'll be our starting point. Oh, we better do this again so we can see the decimal point. So 15.8%. Now, you know what? We probably should go back up here and to page 3 and see, wow, look at all these new products. 1 new product, 2 new product. There's 3 new products coming onto the market. So I know it's going to go down. We could do some math, but I think it's going to be 13.5% instead of 15.8 because there's new products coming out. There's a lot of other factors that you're going to want to take into consideration when you're entering that number. Those are just a few of them. All right, so that's the low-tech market. Now we have a reasonable number of the low-tech market. Now let's flip back to the high-tech market. We'll go back to page 6, actually, for the high-tech market segment analysis. And we can see the total industry unit demand is 2614. So we'll key that number in there, 2614. The next year's segment growth rate is 19.1%. Wow, that's really growing fast. 19.1%, boom. And that means the total market size is going to be 3113. Now, what is our percent of the market going to be for Baker? Well, let's go down and look at Baker. Let's see what we got last year. Last year in the high tech, well, we had 23% of the market. Let's go down and look at our potential. Our potential for the high-tech market was 22.6, so let's start there. But now we've got to say, well, okay, we've got the new products, so maybe we'll take it down by a couple percent. Maybe we'll make it 20.5%. And also, it looks like we're focusing the Baker product on the high-tech market, so we really should bring this down even more. Maybe that's going to be only 9%, since it's really more of a high-tech product. Anyway, and then you can look at how much you're going to spend in promotion and sales. What are your competitors going to spend? How are your competitors going to price the market? There's a million. There's not a million, but there's almost a dozen variables or so. Positioning, MTBF, all of those that will determine your percent of the market. All right, at the end of the day, here's our best guess is 549,000 units in the low-tech market and 638,000 in the high-tech market. Uh-oh, I goofed that up, didn't I? There we go. For a total sales forecast for Baker of 1,187 units. Now, we would want to do the same thing for Ball. It's a new product, so maybe we only think we're going to get 3% of the, well, let's say 5% of the market. And down here, it's not, let's say it's a low-tech product, so we're only going to get 2% of the market. And our bat product, we think is going to be 7% of the market. And in low-tech, it's going to be 0% of the market. And there's our sales forecast. All right, we'll call that good. I wish you the best of luck in figuring out and creating this template. Hopefully this helps. Good luck.